Utah will say, yeah, he's never spoken for under 40 minutes or 30, so.
You have a full hour.
Good.
I'll give you a 5-minute.
Well, let's try to be shorter and then we can have questions. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to just speak to this. And I'm not usually tongue-tied, and I've been tongue-tied for a couple of weeks, and I'll tell you why. A couple of months ago, Justin said I was gonna present, and I had in my mind a very clear conception of what I wanted to share with you, which was basically a combination of, who knows where Faneuil Hall is in Boston? I was privileged to share the stage with a number of people there on December 10th, 2010. They have an annual tea party. Was it 16th? Is it December 16th, Tea Party Day? And the question was, what are the prospects that I was to address for a return to self-government under the terms of our constitutions? And I wasn't the only speaker, but a combination of my convictions that I tried to articulate there and I tried to articulate in a number of places, and a couple other ideas. And what happened a couple of weeks ago, what was it, May 1st, I was discombobulated, and I'm still discombobulated. I came upon the fact that Justice Thomas had given a lecture at UT Austin. And Justice Thomas is a wonderful man. I don't consider him a dynamic speaker, but he's a man of tremendous courage and integrity, and his lecture still has me discombobulated. So if this comes out discombobulated, blame Justice Thomas. He said some things about courage that that are still reverberating and trying to amend my understanding of the world. If you've watched his public career, he is a man of tremendous courage and tremendous integrity. And that is very, as a naval officer, I can tell you that's very rare in any public service, including in uniformed public service. In the Navy, we have institutionalized at the lieutenant level, that's the third level in officer rank, where we begin to weed you out and purposely, institutionally deselect you if you show signs of leadership, integrity. Those are not desired as you move up. And the desire is that by the time you make captain, and by God, by the time you make admiral, these things be removed so that you're not a potential problem. And it's the same with suit and tie public service, as you know. And if you've watched Justice Thomas's career, you've watched a career of adamantine resistance to the relentless pressure of either ambition or flattery or intimidation. So I'm still discombobulated, and I'll do my best. Our country's 250th year in my conviction, and by the way, our Constitution Party in Cache County formed a committee last year, and we're doing some very meaningful things to observe Independence Day. Last year it was this big, this year it's this big, and we're calling it Independence 250. And our contention is that our 250th year confronts us as Americans, or mostly would-be Americans, or might want to be Americans in the same way they might want to be Batman in a costume party, confronts us with some serious, sobering questions. And those are, what has become of our once free republic? And how much more divided can we get? We argue that we in the committee, and by this was the Constitution Party, but then we deliberately reached out, and we have Republicans and Democrats and others deliberately in our committee. The uniting principle is a conscious devotion to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, that we in our country have never been less free. I don't think that's arguable. And it's quite possible that we've never been less united. The only possible contention is 1861. But I would argue that we are fragmented more on an atom level now, not 2 blocks, and that's even more disastrous. I'm not going to be able to use these slides, which will illustrate what I'm trying to say to you, so I'm going to adapt and overcome, as they say in the Navy. But Shakespeare asked us, what a piece of, well, he remarked in the mouth of Hamlet, what a piece of work is man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action how like an angel, in apprehension how like a god, the beauty of the world and paragon of animals. The psalmist said something very similar to God himself. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth quite well. But Shakespeare, in the mouth of Hamlet, also came to a quite opposite and equally true conclusion. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights me not, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so. Job saw despair in the beauty of our mortal existence. My breath, he says, is strange to my wife. Though I entreated for the children's sake of mine own body, yea, young children despise me, I arose, and they spake against me. My bone cleaveth to my skin and to my flesh, and I am escaped with the skin of my teeth. I wish by that contrast to make a picture in your mind of the glorious prospects and sometimes the very painful reality, both of which are true. If a man die, Job asked in the depths of his despair, shall he live again? Hold that in this thought right here, because next to the beauty of man, I argue that one of God's most beautiful and miraculous creations is America. Written history's only truly free country. John Quincy Adams, in the most important Independence Day address ever given in the House of Representatives in 1821, remarked, it, meaning we, our founding, the Declaration, was the first solemn declaration by a nation of the only legitimate foundation of civil government. It was the cornerstone of a new fabric destined to cover the surface of the globe. It demolished at a stroke the lawfulness of all governments founded upon conquest. It swept away all the rubbish of accumulated centuries of servitude. What a glorious thing that was. Look around you. Can you see it? I can. I see freedom dissolved into tyranny. I see a cold civil war lately grown very, very hot. I see a looming national divorce. So like Shakespeare in Hamlet's mouth, and Shakespeare later in Hamlet's mouth, I see the beauty and I see the despair of the reality. And so the similar question comes, if a man dies, shall he live again? If freedom is dead, and if freedom is dead in this country, it is dead in the world. And the evil people have understood that since the beginning. Shall she live again? That is a very serious question. Is our once free republic, and if she is dead, shall she live again? And I believe the answer lies in much deeper questions, and those questions have to do with what makes man man, what makes America America. When you remember Ezekiel, the Lord showed him a vision, and he saw this valley of dry bones, and asked Ezekiel, can these dry bones live again? And he made Ezekiel prophesy the answer. He saw that it wasn't a simple thing of turning on a switch. He saw first bones arise, and then he saw sinews formed on them, and then he saw flesh formed on them, and then he saw the breath breathe into them. And the point of that, if you analogize our dear once free republic, is that it's not as simple as switching on a switch. There are layers that are required without which you do not have the living organism. Okay? So the answer lies in deep questions of whence came America in the first place. Remember, this is written history's only free country. She's not free today, and so you think, well, she's just like all the other countries. Well, yes, she is. She's Job with encrusted skin and breath putrid to his wife, okay, skin and bones. But by law, she is still the Republic of the Declaration and the Constitution. So the question hangs quite literally suspended. The question, if the free republic dies, will she live again? It hangs quite literally, and has for a long time, on the question of whether we will rediscover exactly who distinctly Americans were, what made an American, who they are, what distinctly their compound republic is, and what distinctly is the key to the unexampled liberty that they so long enjoyed, but acceleratingly in the last 100 years enjoy less every hour. And that's important. The answer to that is that the American people is not like any other distinct people in the world. The American compound republic is quite unlike any other government. The unprecedented liberty that we once enjoyed was sustained, and if we don't understand this, we'll never, only by the American people's near universal adoption of a singular American civic religion. That succeeding generations after generation quite consciously imbibed, comprehended, embraced, and passed on to their children well into the 20th century. But I would argue, with a plunge in the last 100 years, hardly ever at all. So we need to ask, how did God create America? In 1818, Hezekiah Niles, who ran Hezekiah Niles Weekly Register, one of the major papers of the country at the time in the post-founding generation, he asked John, would you write an essay about the meaning of the revolution? Because even your son and all of our sons who think they understand it already don't understand it. And John Adams wrote a wonderful essay, The Meaning of the Revolution, and his chief contention, yes sir?
I think I got it.
Can you make the slide go up?
Yeah, I think so. I might have to cut the lights out.
His chief contention was the American Revolution was effected before the shots were fired, before the war commenced. If you don't understand that, there's no hope for any of us. Hey, you're amazing. You're amazing. Can you see that okay?
It
Okay,
might
well then I'm going to
rotate
go
through
like this so
a
I'm not in the
different
way of it, and I'm going to advance. Can I
Which-
advance?
No, I have to do
Oh,
it.
you have to advance it?
And it may do it automatically because of the way
Okay,
it's set. So.
okay. He argued the revolution was in the minds and hearts of the people, a change in their religious sentiments of their duties and obligations. That's what must be understood. God called Americans to a unique and peculiar civic religion. And don't accuse me of blasphemy. I'm not saying a salvific, an eternally salvific religion, but the word religion comes from liga, which is a Roman word for a bond, okay, ligament and obligation, okay? It's our obligation back to God.
What slide do you want on?
There you go. Very good. Let's go to the next slide. That's wonderful. So I'm going to have to go like this or something when I want you to slide, right?
Yeah.
Okay. God created a new... Oh, I think we're in the wrong... we're in the wrong slideshow. You're in
Wrong slideshow?
Yeah, you're in the wrong... Pieces of it have made it into this.
Which one do you? I can go through them all.
Does it have
I
Roman
can't-
numeral 2 in it?
I can't see
The
it.
name
way
has
I
to
can
have a
do it.
Roman numeral 2 in it.
It did, yes.
Really?
But
Hang
it's a
on, let me
different one.
cheat. Let me get a
What?
how do I advance myself?
Just when you find your slide, I can match it maybe.
Oh, but see, okay, well, there we go. That's what I want. Good, you're in the right slide. You're good, okay. Let me give you 6 observations that expand on the thesis that God created America by first creating Americans, and the way he created Americans was by converting a people to a set of truths, which you might call a creed, and once that people had come to believe those truths, to get them to covenant with each other under his authority and explicit appeal to his authority to live by a code of laws. The creed is contained mostly in the second paragraph of our Declaration. The code is contained in our Constitution of 1787 with its amendments. So to expand on that thesis with 6 observations, all the regular factors that make one people distinct and different from other peoples and one with itself, shared race, shared religious confession, shared geography, shared history, shared language. Those things all played a part, but the part was insignificant in the case of America compared to the part that our unitedly coming to believe the 5 truths of the second paragraph of the Declaration played. Okay? Second, then go ahead to the next one. So the singularity of the American people lies in the creed and code more than it lies in anything else. Okay, next slide, please. As a distinct and a peculiar people, we have almost nothing in common with any other distinctive people in history, except to a very great degree with ancient Israel, as she came to become and understand herself through the events of Leviticus and Exodus and Leviticus. So if we're going to learn anything about ourselves by looking abroad, in our poli-sci courses and in our media, everyone else, they say, look to Europe and look to all these other things. Those things have nothing to teach us. France has nothing to teach us. The only people that can really teach us something about how we became a free country, how we lost it, and how we might recover it is the analogy of ancient Israel, who is also a people, yes, by shared language, yes, by shared geography, yes, by all those other things, but most significantly by a shared revealed creed and a shared covenantally adopted code. Next slide, please. And that leads us to the best way to understand everything from Deuteronomy to the end of the Old Testament, the long, sad story of the slow apostasy from its code that Moses prophesied throughout the whole book of Deuteronomy, is to understand that it was preceded and necessitated or made impossible to avoid, made unavoidable by a prior apostasy from the creed. Ancient Israel ceased to live by its code because it ceased to believe the truths that God had revealed at Sinai. In the same way, Americans have ceased to insist that their public servants abide by the code, as by degrees they have ceased to believe the creed of the Declaration. And go ahead, next slide. America's civic history, then, is best understood as a history of faith in, fidelity to, apostasy from, an occasional repentant return to the creed and code of the American civic religion. But the return to the creed always does and cannot not precede the return to the code. In other words, there can be no renewal of constitutional government without first a renewal, then a recomprehension, then a reassent to and deliberate reconversion to the truths of the second paragraph of the Declaration. Go next slide, please. That's the unnegotiable, is that a word? Thesis. Without that, there is no getting anywhere. Next slide, please. Can you get the next one? So the question is, and this is what Justice Thomas did to me for all of my adult life in various fora. I have played on variations on this theme because it's non-negotiable. There's no getting around. There's no hoping for, self-deceptively hoping for a return to constitutional government until we have Americans again. And Americans, in the most deep sense, are people who understand, believe, but it's more than believing. It's a conversion to. You remember our Lord said to Peter shortly, the day before, I think, the Mount of Transfiguration. He asked Peter, now, whom do men say that I am? And Peter says, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Christ applauded the fact that he really knew that. He had received that by revelation from the Holy Ghost. But what happened just a week or two later? Did Peter not deny our Lord 3 times? And did not our Lord then tell to Peter shortly after that, Peter, Satan hath desired to have thee, that he might shift thee as wheat. But I have prayed for thee that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. So implicit in that is the Lord's understanding that with all the revelatory understanding that Peter had been blessed with, he was still not converted. And this is what Justice Thomas has really, please, next slide, impressed upon my mind. I recommend his lecture to you. Go to YouTube and just put in Justice Thomas, or you can go to this link. But Justice Thomas, April 15, UT at Austin Law School, again, it's not an eloquent speech, but it's eloquent in its insistence on understanding and accepting what we don't want to accept, and that is there's a difference between those few people, and he said that there are more in Washington than I ever met, who actually proclaim that they believe in the principles of the Declaration and the laws of the Constitution. He met more of them than I ever did. But even among those, he testifies from 40 years of how many years has he been on the court? Since 91? A lot of years. He's met precious few who were truly converted, meaning that had the courage born of conviction to withstand the three relentless pressures of flattery, ambition, and intimidation that are relentless. I can say that even as a lowly Navy officer, again, from lieutenant on, they're institutionally trying to eliminate any signs of fidelity to your oath, okay? True conversion is evidenced in courage and fidelity. Next slide, please. So the question to ask ourselves is, are we converted, okay? This is what Lincoln said on his way to the inauguration. He sneaked his way to the inauguration for fear of assassination. There were very real threats of assassination. He actually came into disguise into Baltimore and Washington. But he stopped at Independence Hall. It was worth his life. And he stood, and he raised the flag, and he gave a wonderful speech. And it's the speech that he gave everywhere in his adult political life. And as the greatest exegete of the American civic religion, he taught that you cannot have constitutional government without the theses of the Declaration and without conversion to them. At one point he said, "Now, my friends, can this country be saved upon that basis," meaning upon the basis of the Declaration? "If it can, I will consider myself one of the happiest men in the world if I can help to save it. If it can't be saved upon that principle, it will be truly awful. But if this country cannot be saved without giving up that principle," I was about to say, "I would rather be assassinated on this spot to surrender it." He truly meant that. Next slide, please. This morning, about 6 of us went and had the privilege of filming ourselves either reciting or reading the Declaration in the room in which it was adopted and signed. And I've seen this before. Paul won't let me show you the video. I want to show you the video of his false start, where he was so overcome that he was forced more than once to abandon the effort and start again. He was leaking the way I leaked at my wife's funeral. And I've seen other people. There is a power of conversion that is quite distinct from the power of passive assent. Next slide, please. This is why for 30 years, and especially in the last 15 or so that I've been lecturing on civics around the country, I urge people to memorize the Declaration, because you will learn, in memorizing, you will learn what you thought you understood, but you really don't. You have only a superficial understanding. You will learn what it says, what it does not say, and in the process of trying to get it right and getting it wrong and checking yourself, you will have many epiphanies where you realize why it says what it says, how it says, and why it does not say what it does not say that's been crammed down your throat since you were a child in every waking moment. And you will understand tyranny then, now, and the alwaysness of it as you look around you and see the analogs to our day. In another very important speech, when Lincoln was asked by some people in Massachusetts to come to Massachusetts and give a keynote address in honor of Jefferson's birthday, he said a number of beautiful things and wonderful things, perceptive things. All honor to Jefferson, to the man who, in the concrete pressure of a struggle for national independence by a single people, had the coolness, forecast, and capacity to introduce into a merely revolutionary document an abstract truth, applicable to all men and all times, and so to embalm it there, that today and in all coming days it shall be a rebuke and a stumbling block to the very harbingers of reappearing tyranny and oppression. Every great Independence Day address, and the 2 greatest were delivered by John Quincy Adams throughout our history, understood and pointed to that fact. The greatest treasure to us is not the occasionality of the Declaration, but the truths that we assented to, and so placed ourselves under the judgment of God to govern ourselves according. We created a test which we then had to go through, and God has administered to that test to succeeding generations. Most have done mediocre. We've been failing it all my life. Okay, can you govern yourself, and can you govern yourself with your neighbors according to those truths? Next slide, please. Only true conversion is capable of producing courage and fidelity. I've seen that in the life of Justice Thomas and a few other public servants. So, a question to ask ourselves, are we converted? Do we still hold these truths? We think we are. I beg to suggest that we can all stand deeper conversion. And I'm glad that we're doing this Founders Challenge, encouraging people to memorize the Declaration. I can testify from personal experience. It has great power to make you an American. Without more than a dozen or two Americans in this country, all hope truly is lost. One more? I guess that was it. Okay, so that's it. I love a couple of serious questions about that. It's theoretical, but it's vitally important. Lights, please. No questions? Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes, sir.
The Lord raised up these men, and I can even say women, who had such convictions and such things given to them that you have pointed
Yes.
out, that made them, gave them an assurance that the people could govern themselves
Yes.
and could also live by
Yes.
principles
Yes.
that were divine.
Yes.
And govern themselves with truth and right.
Yes, you've exactly said it. Anyone read Edmund Burke's speech on conciliation with America that he gave in Parliament? One of the great speeches in the history of Parliament. You know, Edmund Burke was one of those honorary Americans that almost could have been made an American. And he argued in Parliament, I'm glad the Americans are not putting up with what we're doing, because if they put up with it, then the people in my borough, you're going to ask them to put up with it, okay? But the remarkable thing that he said, do you remember a couple of the charges, right, in our declaration, right, is that he had dissolved repeatedly, representatives repeatedly, right, and then not created new ones, or dissolving the entire government, right, or suspending our legislatures, okay? And Edmund Burke was astonished that over a year after the Boston Port Act, no government in all of Massachusetts, an entire province, he says, is going on just fine, going on quite well, thank you. Why is that possible? There's anarchy. How can they tolerate anarchy? Well, again, in one of the two greatest Independence Day addresses ever given, the one in 1821 by JQA, where he explained, commenting on Edmund Burke's astonishment that the Americans could tolerate no government for over a year. He says, but there was no anarchy. He says there was no official government. We were living by committees of correspondence and our militia organizations, but there was no anarchy. There was law in the hearts of every man, woman, and child. We would no sooner take our neighbor's property or our neighbor's liberty if our town council offered it to us than we would sleep with a total stranger in the streets. We were a people with the law written in our hearts. You remember at the end of Jefferson's Summary Review, he said the sum total of government is simply the science of being honest. We are not that people. But if we become that people, we can survive with the law in our hearts and potentially, if God so wills it, restore constitutional government in our land. But it must begin with him, as it began then. He created Americans first, then he created America. Our wishing for an America in which we can become Americans is not only futile, it's self-deceptive. Yeah. Any questions? Comment? Okay. Thank you.